Top fan, Dave Olson. So, Ruth Bader Ginsberg, alive, dead, encased in carbonite? I'm more worried about the carbonite, really, than anything else. And to be perfectly honest with you, if I had to guess, Dave, I'm gonna say the carbonite is the actual most likely case. And I'm not too, I'm pretty much serious about that. Because when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, there will not be a replacement. Donald Trump will not put, I don't think, anybody on the court in place of her who's not a super liberal. I suspect that they would do anything up to and including walking out, removing the quorum, anything to stop this. And so when I say I think she's going to be encased in carbonite, I think the most likely outcome is, although we're stronger in the Senate than we were before the election, and the House has nothing to say about this one. So if I hope Ruth Bader Ginsburg makes a full recovery and spends the rest of her days with her grandchildren, is very happy. I don't ever want to get to the point where I'm wishing for people to die because I disagree with their politics. But I think it'd be good for the country if she's stopped making rulings the way she's made them, and I have a feeling that I've forgotten her name now. There's a really strong female candidate that Trump had. And I thought for sure he was going to put her up in place of Kavanaugh, and then I realized, oh, he's saving her for Ginsburg. He has to do that. I mean, he doesn't have to do anything. It'd be nice if he didn't have to do anything. Amy Barrett. But he's going to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. He's going to try and replace her with Amy Barrett. And when this happens, and it's going to happen, I wish her the very best recovery, and I hope she takes it easy. I'd like to not see her ever back on the court again, but that's as far as I go with it. But with that said, I don't think she's coming back, and we saw Dave, we saw kind of exponential outrage and hooliganism on the part of the Democrats. So when you had a conservative Scalia die, and you replace him with Neil Gorsuch, you have the typical outrage that comes with any nominee who's a conservative to the Supreme Court, which is a lot of outrage and a lot of huffing and puffing. And then a moderate left the court and was replaced with a conservative, and then you got huffing and puffing squared. And that was Brett Kavanaugh. And if you think that was ugly, when the big liberal, not a big liberal, the big liberal goes, and Trump appoints a conservative, you're going to see huffing and puffing cubed, or to the 5th or to the 10th. We've talked about this before, but it just really needs to be said. They will fight to the death for this, because this is how they run the country. This is how they control the country. Everything that the left did in the 60s, they essentially did through the courts. Nobody voted for this stuff. People didn't vote for Obamacare. Not a single Republican vote, not deemed to have passed, all of this stuff. They do everything through so basically they legislate from the court. They make the court decide that no matter what the American people want in terms of legislation, if the left doesn't like it, the court will overturn it. And that helps them not have to go backwards. And in order to go forwards, they can look at something in the status quo, convince 5 people that this is not in our interest, and then the court will simply just go out there with this kind of judicial activism and overturn existing laws and situations. And so it's a brake when they're being pushed in reverse, and it's an accelerator when they're trying to go forward. And they can't ruin the country without it. They can't do what they want to do without the Supreme Court. So I think you want to talk about a fight to the death. It's going to be horrific. But, well, I think so. I think she'll be encased in carbonite. And I think why that, I mean, if this were to happen tomorrow, and Donald Trump nominates somebody, you're looking at a year and 9 months before the next election, and another 2 months after that before you get a new Congress or president. If she were to go tomorrow, I have no doubt whatsoever they would find a way to stall for almost 2 years, stall for 20 months. And that's the idea of Ruth Bader Ginsberg being encased in carbonite. She's neither here nor there. Even if she were to die, her seat would still be filled by, the carbonite block of Ruth Bader Ginsberg. The good news there is that the carbonite block doesn't get to vote. So it seems to me that what they'd rather do is, instead of find themselves on right now they're looking at a 5-4 court for conservatives. If she goes and they replace her with a conservative, it'll be a 6-3 court. That's an actual margin. So I suspect that they will just do everything they can to block that, and it will be a 5-3 court with eight members until they can get their liberals back. This is the thing. I keep getting. I'm constantly embarrassed, and I'm embarrassed at being disappointed, and I'm embarrassed at being disappointed in the quality of the people that are up against us in this fight. I just wish they were. I wish they were better people, but this is how it works. If they can't win by the rules, then they change the rules. And if they can't win by changing the rules, then they ignore the rules. Now, as Eric says, you can probably find a way. I suspect it might be even easier, as I said, with the Senate now more in our position, to actually do it. And if you actually do it, then no matter what you may think about Donald Trump in terms of his negatives, replacing a conservative, a moderate, and the arch liberal with 3 conservatives is a lifetime. It's a lifetime win. That's a win that's going to stay around as long as most of us are around. It's an enormous win. And I remember right immediately after the election, when the progressives realized what had happened, there was a lot of heat directed at Ginsburg for having not retired during Obama's term, because she was not exactly a spring chicken in 2016. And I actually thought myself, why didn't she retire during Obama's term? And then I realized the reason she didn't retire during Obama's term was there was no chance whatsoever that Donald Trump was going to win that election. Not a chance. Couldn't happen. Absolutely impossible. You had a 20-knot, 30-knot headwind at the polls, meaning the press coverage is swinging the vote 30, 40 points from one side to another. You can't lose under a situation like that, except that sometimes you can. It's so interesting to me that Donald Trump is the only person that could have beaten Hillary Clinton, and any other Democrat would have beaten Donald Trump. That's what I think. I think it was like kind of Clash of the Titans, I think anybody else would have beaten Donald Trump, and I don't think Donald Trump could have beaten anybody. Well, obviously, I don't think Donald Trump could have beaten anybody other than Hillary Clinton, and vice versa. Hillary Clinton, I think, would have beaten anybody else. The only person she couldn't beat would be Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's the only person who's prepared to fight as dirty as they do, and God bless him for it. I'll just keep reiterating this point. I don't care if I go over it 100,000 times. The most brilliant thing that I have ever seen in politics, ever, was at the second debate when Hillary was about to start the big Republican War on Women campaign. And Donald Trump had the political genius to put 5 of Bill Clinton's rape victims front and center. And you could see the expression on Bill Clinton's face. He took away Hillary Clinton's most powerful weapon in that one move. And he didn't just take it away for the night, he took it away for the duration. That if he hadn't done that, he would have lost the election. Hillary couldn't play the woman card. She couldn't play the woman card because Donald Trump comes out and says, kind of funny, you're talking so much about fairness to women when you were married to a guy who was raping people in the White House, and you were the person who primarily destroyed the lives of the women that be coming forward. Yeah, and because you'd be in prison, that was the highlight of the campaign. What did she said something? I think I'd be afraid if Donald Trump was elected and Trump, because you'd be in prison. That's genius. That's genius. So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think this is going to go on much longer, to be honest with you. I think they would encase her in carbonite and keep her breathing on a respirator if they could. We did a show where just a little while ago was a right angle where we were Scott. I think it was Scott Show. He's talking about this guy, this writer who said, if only one person, if only you could give 1 minute of your life, if only every one of us out there could give 1 minute of our life, she'd be able to serve out the rest of Trump's term and serve out the rest of the term. If only we could give 1 minute from our life each and give it to Ruth Bader Ginsberg, which to me is the absolute definitive progressive statement. In a nutshell, you don't have to go any further than that. The reason it's a perfect progressive statement is because it's so collectivist, it's so elitist, it's so merciless, it's so hero worshipping, and most of all, it's just not possible. So to sit there and lament about the fact that I can't take a minute off of my life and give it to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and to talk about it and think about it, pray about it, write an article about it, it's like, if healthcare were free, I'd be in favor of free healthcare. So anyway, so much for that. Moving on.